agree. You kind of sound like Phil Norman, right? Kind of.
Mark Norman.
Mark.
I think I sound like Phil Gardner.
Sorry,
Or Mark
Oh
Norman.
my god, I kind of hear it now.
I know. I can't.
Just
When I
speak
edit.
with the accent. Be like,
What? He has an accent?
well, he puts on a voice kind of like this.
I think that's just his
hey,
voice.
So, but okay. So, but you agree,
gotta
right?
be a little awkward.
You agree, right? Do you not agree? Kind of like.
Hey, I
Mark
don't know if I
Norman?
agree. Why are you trying to put words in my mouth?
Put this on, Billy.
Or Mark's mouth. Or
Okay,
Phil Norman. Or Mark Gardner.
That's
That's
the
my
title
uncle's
of
name.
the title of the podcast is Phil Norman.
Oh.
Oh man.
No, I was gonna say no. John Mulaney
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
also
look
sounds like Mark Norman.
like Phil Gardner.
Kinda.
Which
It's the way
will
they
sound
speak.
like Phil Gardner. Oh, see? That's
Maybe
the
you should
crazy
just
part.
be a comedian.
And this is what I say.
Maybe that's the move.
I think
It's
I
funny
think you
because like
should
when
be a
I
comedian.
edit
You're a
anything,
funny guy.
I'm like, my voice is fucking terrible.
No, it's
But
great.
apparently it's a comedian's voice. So or a
generic white
Yeah,
guys.
generic
or
white-
am I being racist?
generic TV personality like yeah.
Phil Norman and Billy the racist.
Okay. This
What a
one's
great time to
Okay, this is
We've started. This is
I'm gonna are we filming right now?
Yeah, we're filming.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I was no, it's not.
Feels weird.
Billy's back. Yeah, it feels weird
Too
having him.
close to you.
And
And
usually,
you.
like when you're on the other side and there's
Feels like
someone
that.
No,
in
this is
between
much
us.
better for me.
Yeah.
Because normally as a guy, as a person in the middle, because you're both kind of like hosting and asking questions, it's
Yeah.
more.
Because you're doing bing
Yeah,
bong,
this is-
bing
this is
bong.
This-
like-
we're just staring at
now
you.
we're just like,
This
so
is easier.
Billy,
Tell us about your life. Mr.
tell me
Hsu.
where you've come from and what you've know. I think you already did that last time.
Yeah.
We learned the Billy story.
Yeah.
Well,
Billy's
welcome
been
to
on
the
like the most out of anybody.
Yeah.
Is this your fourth time?
third or
One,
fourth.
if there's a Hall of Fame for this place, I deserve to be on it. Right
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah, 100% in the
You were our first guest too,
yeah
right?
yeah yeah.
Remember
yeah.
when we had that lady that had the biggest Ponzi scheme in Canadian history?
Did she take the title of first biggest?
I don't know.
First biggest, second biggest?
Maybe
It
it's
was-
not confirmed yet.
It was pretty significant financial calamity for some.
Good luck finding that episode.
Well, welcome to the Mark Norman podcast experience.
Mark Norman. I can't do that.
I gotta start. Maybe that's why I actually have a tough time. Fuck, it's all coming together now. I kind of sometimes have a tough time listening to his comedy or him on podcast because of the voice, and I think it's because it sounds like mine, and I hate it.
Maybe.
I don't like listening to my own voice,
It's your voice on
which is
steroids.
funny as someone who edits a podcast, I guess. But whatever.
You know what it is? He's more dry.
He's super dry.
So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
you have a lot of like emotion when you speak and you get like excited or like whatever. He's like,
a lot of hands.
hey,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
right?
it's very-
Yeah. Billy, you gotta come like 3 inches this way, cause like a little more. Yeah, cause you're there. That's that's
All right.
way better. Yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
Wow,
So
this is good. Don't tell.
So moving forward, and I appreciate you guys having me on here.
yes,
It's always fun to be
He's
here,
gonna charge us for his appearances.
talking to you guys, for what it is worth. However, moving forward, I'd like to sit on
side.
on the corner.
That's fine.
It's much better than
we can accommodate.
sure.
We're gonna get a table in the middle so we can just do like full on double interview style. Did you bring your cover letter? Are
Okay.
you?
Yeah.
Can I see your portfolio?
What do you think's going on right now in this market?
What I think's going on?
No.
I think some people are buying and some people are selling.
So you think it's normal?
Classic realtor response.
I think it's normal. Okay. No, this is not a normal market.
Okay.
Because if we look at interest rates, them being at kind of the highest they've been in 22 years, this would not be considered a normal market, right? You couldn't be on one end of the spectrum and be like average somewhere else, kind of a thing. So this is not a normal market. I do think. I do think it's, if you're asking me, is it a good time to buy or sell? I do think if just going back to the fundamentals, never really changes. The numbers work. And in that sense, I do think it's a good time to buy because the numbers do work in this market. And I do like the idea, not counting the cost of capital. When the price comes down and the rents are going up, that's not a bad time to buy. Because right now the prices are coming down with interest rates going up again. And the rents are still going up, right? So it's not necessarily a bad time to buy, in my mind, especially when the numbers are working. If it were the opposite, for example, the rents are going down, the price is going up, and what's the last point?
Cost of capital going down, perhaps.
The cost of the cost of capital is going down.
I mean, we kind of saw it. We saw it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Which the exact same thing happened in Toronto, right? And it's counter to the group mentality, if you will, right? Or the overall market mentality is when prices go down and interest rates go up, people get scared and nothing happens. But in the reverse, when prices go up because everyone's FOMO buying and rents are going down, I mean, typically rents don't go down. So this was a specific scenario. But also interest going down, so therefore money is free. So therefore, let's go out and buy some stuff. That's all that people think about a lot of the time. Cheap money, everyone else is buying, so why am I not buying? Number always goes up, right?
So to that point, yes, because if you found numbers that worked within that market, you buy. It's the same thing, right? Whatever kind of market you're in, do the numbers work or not?
Correct. You just have to really hold. That's got to be the core value, right? Is your fundamentals in all markets.
Yeah.
And just because everyone else is rushing out and buying stuff, if your fundamentals aren't met, then you're not. Or just because everyone else is scared to buy stuff doesn't mean you need to be scared to buy stuff if you can meet your core fundamentals.
It's true. I agree with that. So we're not in a normal market because interest rates are very high. So you would expect less buyers, and it has dampened the amount of buying, right? It has dampened the amount of buying. However, I still don't think there's enough supply in Toronto in general to meet even this dampened demand. You can see with immigration, you got 1 million people coming this year. A very visible portion of that million is coming to Toronto GTA. And, we're not getting really strong signals of some sort of crazy sort of change in policy that allows crazy building all of a sudden. Or adding lots of rental stock all of a sudden.
It's not even allowing that building. It's actually the fact that the cost to build is just so high now.
That's also true.
So as a developer, I mean, go back 3, 4, 5, 10 years, it was a lot less expensive to develop these giant projects. Yeah. Now it's costing double in some cases, to finance that project, and prices remain pretty similar. I mean, they're not, wildly different than they were, 3 years ago, or, during the beginning of COVID, or that first boom where it went up 25%, then dropped. Or sorry, it was going up. What did it go up during COVID there when it ran up high and then dropped?
Like late 2022.
Yeah, it was like 25%, something like that. And then it dropped that 25% and then went back up 18 to 20%, and a lot of fluctuations in the market. And that's not necessarily a good thing for developers. They want something that's more predictable, right? Like you go back 10 years and a development that was just starting is predicting, okay, we'll charge you, $600,000 for this condo. Today it would probably be worth $500,000, but if you go back historically, 8% every year, the appreciation goes up, and in 5 years we're going to price that in, and it should be valued at closer to $600 to $650. So that's what we're going to charge you, and that's what was happening. But then you saw all the developments that happened right before COVID, and then during COVID, the ones cashed out great, right? Like people had properties closing, and they're like, holy crap! In the last year, this value went up 20% plus the appreciation over the last 5 years of the time I've been waiting for my property to close. I'm going to sell right now, make a crap load of money. And then if you waited 6 months, it was like, holy crap, I can't sell this now, and I lost money.
Things changed quick, and then a lot of people were kind of you catch the falling knife, if you will, or you kind of chase the bottom down. But you price. I still want to hold on to my March numbers, but you're in May, so you price like it's April, but then you can't sell. And then you drop the price, but you still kind of held yourself a month behind, and then you just follow the.
Yeah, there was a lot of lagging like that.
I think if I was a developer, I would be collecting right now. I would be purchasing buildable land, but I likely would not be necessarily acting on a lot of the development. I would probably wait for the next few years to pan out until we can get a soft confirmation that we're at the beginning of the next uptick cycle. Yeah. Right. I think as a developer, that's probably when you want to do the most of your work, and as you're also trying to count on lower cost of capital, right? Capital to build it, or capital for anything right now, is very expensive. I think on a policy side, at the very least, we've started to implement things to help create the creation of more units.
In Toronto specifically.
In Toronto, but in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
Bill 23 in Ontario changed things I mean, pretty dramatically for some areas. Some areas were already fairly pro-building, but to kind of carte blanche across the province, that helps. And Toronto is taking it a step further, but it's like a drop in the bucket, right? It solves this like missing middle piece, I guess, a little bit. It allows the mom and pop landlord and the small scale developer to add a little bit of units here and there. But
so you say, when you say drop in a bucket, I think it's better to give more of like an anecdotal sort of reference, in the sense that, you know, you did a recent basement lease, right, for two bedroom basement. How many messages were you getting a day?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
So when you say drop in a bucket, it's literally
it's really a drop in the bucket,
right?
You put a basement up.
If you understand like the amount of demand versus the amount of supply, it's 100 versus 1.
We'll see. Yeah, some of our, like, if you put a nicer look, like a newly finished unit, be it a basement or an upper, like let's say 2 beds and under, for I don't know, less than $3,000, you probably get like tens of thousands of views at least on your marketplaces.
Oh, I was getting weekly,
right?
Thousands,
like you'll get.
Views.
I think we did 2 bed basements, things like that, with like 20,000+ views, and like you get 1,000 messages in a week, kind of thing. The demand is absurd and only growing, and it's not a number that the construction side of the equation can kind of meet, even with massive changes.
That's okay. So fundamentally, everything that's happening in the economy with interest rates and how expensive the cost of borrowing is, it should crash a real estate market. But the market in Canada, and specifically I'm talking about Toronto, is exactly what you're saying. There's such a shortage and there's such a demand for housing that the effect isn't actually being felt. Yeah. What should be happening with interest rates isn't being felt in our market, and it's going to take dramatically higher interest rates to have that effect. Whereas if there wasn't this extreme shortage of, it's the missing middle, exactly what you said. It's the middle income housing that we don't have anymore. If you go back when, 20, 30, 40 years ago, middle class people were buying in York, Etobicoke, Scarborough. There was all these boroughs, East York. They're all the boroughs where all the middle class was moving to. That was the suburbs, right? Now, if you go back 10, 15, back then, 10, 15 years ago, people went to Newmarket and went to Burlington, Mississauga, outside those areas. Now you can't go anywhere. There's no middle class housing, because middle class is what? Think about it. Middle class is what? If the average home is 1.2 million, let's say 1.3 million, and to qualify for that, you need at least $200,000 of income, if not more, 250. That's not middle class anymore. We're outside of the middle class area. So to purchase a property that's comfortable for you to live in, you have to go either hours away. Maybe Hamilton is the closest, which is an hour, but even that's a little bit up there in prices depending on where you want to live. So you're already outside of the GTA, which is fine. That's okay, because as it is, it's a free market. There's supply and demand. If that's what the market is dictating, that's what it's dictating. But the only issue it's dictating that is there's not enough housing. You could have more housing, more affordable housing, bigger housing, instead of having the only thing that a family of 4 or 5 could rent or buy. Yeah. It's not even just buying, it's renting as well, right? Now, more than ever, I'm seeing, well, you mentioned that bedroom lease, 2 bedrooms, and I'm having 4 people say, hey, this is the only way we could afford this lease. It's going to be, $600 each,
I would say
something like
that.
The
majority of lease applicants that I saw, at least for, depending on the area, but for the most part, majority of applications I see for a lease is like, take the number of rooms and double the occupants.
Yeah. And it makes sense financially for those people. Well, I totally understand it, right? Like, what, you're going to spend $600 or $1,200 a month. $1,200 is a lot for 100%. Someone who's a student or who's getting their first job, all that, it's a lot of money.
From what I've seen, to your point, take the number of rooms times 2. That's it's more prevalent in a subsection of the tenant pool. Sort of international students would be
very much so.
Would be
anywhere closer to a school.
Yes,
would be more part of like can we get 2 people into a room? The more international students. I still think affordability. If you tamper your expectations of living in a large city that offers a lot of convenience, you can still live affordably here, I think.
I think...
and we were just talking about this downstairs, right? Compared to other major metropolises.
Global cities. Global cities.
New York, whatever. You might make a little more money over there, but expect to live in that space, right?
So, less space. I think a lot of people were seeing the push towards like a roommate situation instead of 1 beds. Just like, I'm going to live in 1 bed. Instead of that, I'll live with roommates. those types of things. Something you said that kind of made me think just about going outside the city that I wanted to go back to. It's just a thought I had. I was talking to somebody, I don't even remember who, yesterday about cost of living inside the city and that being desirable, and then cost of, not even cost of living, sorry, cost of like housing.
Yeah.
And then moving further out of the city for the cost of housing to be cheaper. The further out you go, we started to see the cost of like food is going up dramatically outside the city. It used to be grocery stores in Toronto would be more expensive than a grocery store in Newmarket or what have you. But if you go an hour or two north of the city or even further where you're going to ideally have a fairly low cost of living, your job pool kind of sucks, or at least isn't as great. But the other pieces of how inflation affects people are going up a little bit differently depending on the geographic location, right? So it's just made me think there's kind of different points of pain all around.
100%. I'm going to jump back at the point that you just made about the other global cities, Billy. There's a big difference in Toronto and those cities. And the fact is that if you go to a New York or if you go to a Hong Kong, Toronto relatively has a significant amount, almost infinite. It's not technically infinite, but more space to develop. We have Scarborough, which is largely untouched. We have York, which is just beginning to become more and more developed. Etobicoke, largely untouched. This is North York, largely untouched. We have so much land that's dedicated towards single family housing that we haven't utilized properly because, I sound like a broken record, but we made car dependent suburbs. But single family housing is not the answer at all. Not anymore. Not because think of New York. Do you know a lot of single family homes on Manhattan? Like not really. And the ones that are converted 5-story old, townhomes that were there 150 years ago. Yeah. So that's fine.
Even the nicest of the neighborhoods, right? Even the nicest of the neighborhoods is like a converted freehold kind of thing.
Yeah, which is fine. That's how they're used to living, and that's I'm not talking about missing middle because now in New York we're talking about $10 million US home in Manhattan. That's the different story. But for us, that used to be the middle class dream. The Canadian American dream was to own a single family home with a nice garage and some space and have a yard with your white picket fence and you're living comfortably because it used to be $50,000 to do that, right? That was different. And you were making $50,000. So, you can pay that off over time. Now that is not the middle class. You can't think of single family housing as middle class solutions anymore. It's breaking up single family housing into multi-generational living, which was also done in the past. A lot of immigrants came in and did that. So it's not like a new concept we're talking about. It's just that's the only way of doing it now. Or largely, if you are a middle class family and you're looking to purchase a single family home, your only financially strong option is to split up the home into at least 2 units, but probably more so that you can actually afford living and have proper savings and not spend 50% or more of your total income, net income, or gross income. Net income is probably 60% of it that you're spending. It's ridiculous. It's the only way, and it's just policy change. Like we said, if we changed into developing more low rises or bigger condos, not focusing on 400 square foot, studios and focusing on where's the family with 2 kids going to live? They need 3 bedrooms, right? Like where are you going to put these people at an affordable price? Not because now, you have that downtown. That's what, $1.2-1.3 million condo at least if it's a 3 bedroom. Yep. Depending on where it is in the city. So we have those neighborhoods in Scarborough. We have those neighborhoods in Etobicoke. We have those neighborhoods in North York.
Got to do something with them.
We just got to do something with it and make it affordable. Because if you plop that, and I get it, if you plop that on a subway line, immediately the value goes way up, which is not going to be affordable housing. Unfortunately, affordable housing needs access to transit. So it's kind of like, what's this saying, catch-22? It's like, what do you do? How do you create proper...
And now, transit. Also, are we talking truly affordable housing, as defined, or just more housing that is more accessible to more people
missing
instead
middle
of
housing.
The top of the market, right?
Exactly.
I think it also made me think of a couple things in terms of the middle class. Either the parameters need to change in terms of you need to move up the curve in terms financially of what's classed as the middle class. Or your expectations.
The second one
need to change, right? Of what the middle class has access to, and what becomes, there's a financial barrier that's just going to be here generationally.
I think that the new sort of American or Canadian dream or Toronto dream is no longer a single family home,
Right.
or it could be the single family home, but you have to house hack it.
Not in the same extent as it was.
It's very much, and we're starting to see. Thankfully, we're starting to see that mindset shift from some people. Like,
and the policy. Now, maybe I gave the Toronto government or municipal policymakers a little too little credit, but it looks like the 4-unit thing is actually going to have a good impact.
Yeah,
better than nothing, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's been a long time of nothing, and it is certainly better than nothing. I think it's going to take time for people to really wrap their head around that. I know there's a lot of people that are still like just refuse to believe that's the only option, or for whatever reason can't fathom a stepping stone to their house that they're going to die in, kind of thing. Instead of like, I'm just going to buy my dream home first, right out of the gate. You need to take some smarter steps and to kind of add some financial fallbacks for yourself.
So going back to the going back 50 years or whatever, that Canadian dream. I mean, I sort of like I know there are a lot of immigrants who achieved that Canadian dream, but because the house hack too.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny. That is the immigrant mindset. They've done it so well, but those who were born and raised in the suburbs here, like, I want the first house I want is the 2-car garage, 4-bedroom I grew up in.
Here's the difference,
which is just not achievable.
Here's the difference
for most.
The immigrant dream, like you said, those immigrants came here poor. Yeah. And they bought homes still being relatively poor. Yeah. It was the access to purchase. Sure, it was the difference. Because back then, if you were middle class, you didn't have to house hack. It was actually the people that were below middle class that came here with a suitcase, or not even just $5 in their pocket, worked 12 hours, shared a room with a family member or a friend for very low rent, and worked for 5 years, saved up 10 grand or 20 grand and bought not even 5 grand, 10 grand,
whatever it was,
bought a property and then house hacked it because they couldn't afford the payments. Yeah, that makes sense. But now the dream of coming here and owning a property, unless you are already well above middle class, because you need to bring $200,000, and we're not talking about middle class anymore. I think middle class doesn't just have $300,000 sitting around that's like, what are we going to do? Let's go buy a property. Like it's not how it works.
That opportunity is likely lost on most, but it is interesting that the immigrants, the house hackers that you've seen that have been able to avoid the lifestyle inflation have done a lot better than a lot of people that I know that were born and raised here and have kind of just, this is what I expect, and fall victim to the lifestyle inflation big time. Sorry, you were saying.
Oh, I just lost my train of thought there. I was going to just say, but the house hacker, when you talking about the house hacker, still under current policy, you can only house hack under $1 million, right? Still, I think. For middle class,
right? With down payment being a constraint.
If we're keeping the same parameters for middle class, right? Because there's not that much in Toronto that's under $1 million. We probably do some work on it though.
Yeah, I mean, let's say under $1.2 million.
Yeah, then
that opens up a lot more.
It opens you up to a lot more options, but I guess to Billy's point, the constraint of how much capital do you actually have? Yeah, right. Then you're keeping yourself to a lower down payment there. Something else that I did think of when you were talking about in the core of the city and the bachelors and things like that. I think I talked about a couple weeks ago an engineer that I met that was doing some work downtown in the core and got stuck driving forever afterwards.
The truck or something.
Yeah, it made me think of just we're kind of having maybe we're at risk of having like a little bit of a brain drain kind of thing from the core of the city. When you think of this generation, if most people can't afford to start their family in Toronto, they're going to leave Toronto to start their family, or they're never going to start a family. And for a lot of people, that's not an option. So if the young families need to leave the city to start their family, and their AAA jobs working in the core, maybe they don't stay there forever. Or so this guy was a good example. They had to go outside of the city to find someone who could fill that niche for that job that needed to happen, right? And then that person was heavily inconvenienced by driving in Toronto traffic, whatever. But that thing can continue to happen more and more if there is no access to that kind of housing in the city. If we don't fill that missing middle, right? And the young family continually gets priced out and priced out and priced out and has to move further and further. The skills move further and further. or you just are left with like the top 1% of the skills who are getting paid for it, right?
Sounds a lot like the Hunger Game districts.
Kind of, right?
That's where the theory comes from.
I think that's kind of where all big metros work in that district.
But it's true, right? You have Hong Kong, and you have your ultra elite that all live right in the middle of the city center, because that's where all the ultra elite jobs are, and that's the only people that could afford to live there because their jobs are there, and it kind of washes the wealth a little bit, right? Like, sure, you can be making $1 million a year, but if you're paying hundreds of thousands on a mortgage, then are you really making
what other
trading it off to live in that piece of land?
But not everyone can be, not everyone can make the $1 million a year for, let's say, the banker downtown who can afford to live there. What about the services around?
I think there'll always be
around
the
that
services.
guy.
There will always be those services.
There has to be,
because
where do they live?
It's just farther away. Yeah, it's just farther away, and that's why we have to do a better job at developing Scarborough, North York, and Etobicoke, and not try to get ultra elite people everywhere, because it's not needed everywhere. You need those.
If
you
you
need
run
the middle
for
class.
city councillor, I'll vote for you.
Thank you.
I think I've said that before too. We've Spiro 2020.
I think
4-3.
I remember you talking about wanting to. Part of the reason why I got into real estate was to solve some affordable housing issues.
Yes.
So you have my vote, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate
Bill,
that.
I don't know.
All right, wait. Does he have my vote, or is this a scenario where I'm running against him, kind of thing?
Oh my God!
Don't vote for me.
We should run against each other.
Why? What? Oh,
It'd just be fun.
all right.
No, I'm not running anytime soon. But I do think, there are. It's an issue that it's easier said than done, for sure, right? Like,
There's so many prongs.
You can't predict the outcome of everything, because it's such a unique scenario. I think the real question is owning property a fundamental human right, or is it actually having a clean and safe space to live that is the fundamental human right? I am in the thought of the second, right? It's about having the clean and safe space to live. However, I'm also in a perspective of a little bit, I'm coming from a point of a little bit more privilege, and being able to work in the industry that I work, and having the access to actually owning a property, which I am aware that most people are not in that scenario. So I can understand not being in that scenario and saying, no, hey, I want to own something too. And yeah, I feel for you. Yeah, you definitely should try to strive to own for something, but it is very unlikely that a lot of people that don't own something, or currently either are in the top 1% of earners, own something in generationally that's getting passed down or whatever. There's a good chance that they will never be able to afford a house on their own.
Yeah.
So it's just coming to terms of, is that okay, and is the general public okay with that? Because if they are, which I mean, it's tough for me to sit here and say, yeah, you should be okay with that, because I also own a property. So it's like, it's kind of like not punching down, but you know what I mean? It's like saying, be happy with not owning something, because I would be too, even though I believe I should be trying to own something, right? So it's
I think it's a human right to be able to own property. I think it's definitely a human right to own property.
Really? Meaning that everyone should
own a piece of land.
Not should have the ability. Yeah,
Right.
Not should. You should have the ability.
if they are.
Yes. Okay.
so
It's just
designed.
private property, right?
Right.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that for sure.
Do you own Bitcoin, sir? There's a lot of the same sort of philosophies there.
Yes, I agree 100% with the right to own
Yeah.
property, but it's not that. That's not my question. It's not the right to own. It's the actual fact of owning. Should
you own,
owning?
right? Well, I think I said
right?
I mean, I think we can all pretty unanimously agree that having access to safe and clean housing
100%.
is obviously the bare minimum human right. I think it's tough when you look back at like the history of our species and the number of like places on the planet that you could own, and the number of people that exist on the planet that could own these properties. I mean, at the very least, like decent property ownership is, I don't think you could even call it a right. Because just the number of people versus the number of available lots are going to you're going to get into some crazy weird boonies before you can house everybody or give everyone a piece of property. But how often does it happen that everyone owns property? Or
They try it with communist revolutions. They don't work.
Exactly. Right?
It doesn't work. Yeah.
That's like kind of the point.
Yeah.
I agree. I think everyone should have the ability to. Everyone should. I certainly think it's a generational wealth builder, and everyone should strive to. I think the reality of the situation is just to everyone on the planet to be able to actually own a piece of property somewhere is, I don't know how feasible that is, right? Unless you chop every one of these 3 units, you know, if you take a single family, turn into 3 units, then you condo it, then you sell those pieces off. Maybe, but we got to go real heavy on our development.
I think it's the same reason as people, the people who moved to Canada and who did that in the 60s and 50s. It's the same reason people will move out of Toronto, right? Is for more opportunity somewhere else. And you might get more opportunity and more affordable living if you go to Calgary or if you go to Texas or, you know, wherever, you know, pick a country, you know, one of the, you might not get much opportunity in like a Balkan country, but the prices will be much cheaper. Like there are areas that you can go and buy cheaper and you might have some opportunity, but if that's what your goal is, right? Like there's a lot of people I know that moved to Windsor because they could afford it and that's where they started their careers and, you know, all you know, go for it.
And that just great. Continues to happen.
Yeah. Right? And you move to Windsor and then the next city will pop up that will be, you know, who knows where, but another 4 hours away maybe. And that will boom as well. So
do you think anywhere in Ontario is going to be even close to Toronto moving forward?
No.
Or GTA?
How can it be?
Mississauga would be the only thing that could come close. Mississauga is phenomenal. Except it goes against everything I believe in city building. So like I was driving through it and it's like, dude, if you were to walk from one end of the downtown core of Mississauga to the other, you're going by these giant roads with nothing in between. Just giant pieces of land and department stores and parking lots, and it's just like, what is that? Come on. What
do you mean by your question? Like in terms of value, cost of ownership, just availability.
I guess in terms of like wanting where people want to live,
right?
Where people want to live in general.
I think if you were looking
like, for example, all things being equal right now, if you had a choice, would you rather live in Mississauga or Toronto?
Toronto. Oh, Toronto's like by far.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else I'd rather live in Ontario than Toronto. There's nowhere else I'd rather live in Canada.
Is there anywhere close then?
There's nowhere close. No.
I'm asking you if there's somewhere close in the future. Something going to pop up.
I think KW has a chance.
Kitchener, so you would want to live in Kitchener one day instead of Toronto?
No, not right now, but it has a chance.
Whatever KW has to be that it has to pop up and kind of like usurp Toronto in terms of like. Yeah.
So you would need
the access to all sorts of.
This is what you would need. This is what you would need. You would need all the banks there.
Yeah.
You need all the sports teams,
tech companies,
all the sports teams there.
Yeah. You would need, I get it.
You would need.
It's going to take something crazy, and I think it's only KW, Hamilton, and Windsor that have an actual shot at it. And
I don't see it happening, but okay.
I don't see it happening. No. I don't see it happening. But if it was to happen, it would be in one of those places for sure.
So something new that pops up and but all of those places also have access to land.
Yes.
Toronto, one of the biggest things that kind of keeps Toronto in at least in terms of its like exclusivity and desirability for freehold land is we're so gated around us. You go to any of those other places and there's swaths of buildable land around them.
Yeah.
Right? Which to be fair, will add to the ability to create housing, which is good. But in terms of like the Manhattanization or creating something like exclusive and expensive,
no, Toronto
will always have an advantage in that, and it's the first. And I don't know any time that I've even considered like where else can usurp Manhattan. Like
it's always going to be Manhattan. Yeah,
but
it did happen though in California. Right? California wasn't as crazy as it was, 40, 50 years ago. It was all about New York and stuff.
Yeah.
California's a powerhouse now. They've overtaken it.
So maybe Calgary overtakes Toronto.
Point, that might happen.
It might happen. And the only reason I named those three places is exactly what you were talking about. KW has all the tech industry and it's only growing. So I think that area has a chance to have actually middle class and higher people wanting to live there, and it's very nice in Waterloo.
That would probably be my number one place to pick as a secondary hub.
Windsor, I say, because if Detroit pops off again, then it's literally right across. So that spillover effect of jobs, you'll have a big city that actually has jobs. Right now, forget about what I'm saying.
Generational
it doesn't make sense.
Stigma that needs to be broken.
Well, it's not even think about it, man. 40 years ago,
Windsor.
Detroit was huge, right?
That's what I mean. Now there is generational stigma that needs to be broken.
They moved, all those jobs outside of it.
A time less than a decade ago that I think it was like 5 years ago that you could buy a house in Detroit for an iPhone.
Yeah, for $1.
Or I think someone bought a train station for a toonie. Like,
yeah. And that's fine. If Detroit was to rebuild, which can happen, you never know, but it can happen, then Windsor will pop off with it. But we're not talking about comparing to Toronto. We're talking about having another major player in the game. I don't think anything. The only one that could theoretically beat, I would say, Toronto would be Hamilton, and that would also require more effort than I would ever imagine ever being possible but it has all the, I mean, it's on the same lake. It's pretty nearby. It's closer to the U.S. It's closer to some of the other cities we mentioned. There are a lot of reasons. There's already a financial hub there. There's already jobs there. It's just, kind of developing it better because right now it's not.
I think we should honestly strive to have as many of those
for sure
hubs around, like the GTA hub, as possible, because we're seeing the problem when you smash as many people as possible into the GTA, right?
Yeah.
The more of those hubs from places for people to go that actually have work, that actually have services, that actually have housing, the better.
I wonder what kind of conversations people at the city council are having.
They're just trying to get reelected.
That's a good question,
what kind of conversations they're having there.
Good question.
Like you guys don't even work in these kind of places. You guys are kind of like just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because we're saddened by it.
Well,
see what's happening to the generation.
But again, we're in a free market. We have just as much power as these policymakers do. We can't policymakers.
So
about how much
a
time
collective
it takes.
might have.
Yeah.
If you want, so this is why the free market is important. I think because sometimes you can't rely on the government to.
You can never rely on
to sort of fix some sort of stuff. So the free market can play its role in sort of developing purpose rentals or purpose or more units. And even they've reduced to made it more accessible to small investors now too.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point that we're going back a little bit here, and think it's important thing just to make these units safe and habitable, and that's part of the privilege of being, I guess, a landlord. I would say.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't want to be, getting making money and then terrorizing your tenants with roaches and whatever, right? Yeah, you would want to be
that is maybe
a responsible sort of developer.
Number one thing that upsets me about this space is those landlords. The number of memes, the landlord special or whatever that exist, or just like the way that the people are treated by the landlord it's a shame. Like it really does put a damper. Anyways, we should strive to create more clean housing, and everyone wins in that scenario. Well,
you don't need the government for this. If you have the government involved, it's going to take 15 years and a bunch of
I'm still waiting for LRT.
It still requires the government to, pass laws to allow us to make housing. There is still a piece of that puzzle that is important. Now we can do fourplexes before we couldn't, right? They are actively helping us push things forward.
Well, this is almost like a plug, like
not
that fourplex thing, or 3-unit things. Like it's kind of our specialty.
Yeah,
it was perfect for us.
It was a good timing.
Well, we were always trying to solve a missing middle problem.
Yeah,
a lot of our housing is like affordable, relatively affordable.
Yeah.
Single family homes and smaller units. That's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
All right, boys.
And I wouldn't say the government that actively makes policy. It's reactively.
They were forced. Somebody on the provincial side was forced, and then that forced the hand of the municipal side. And how that was forced was probably because we have a fucking housing issue that no one did anything about for decades. On that note.
Yeah, we should end this.
Who did you guys vote for? I want to know.
Whoa.
Did you guys vote for municipal?
I won't tell you.
Oh, did you guys vote for municipal?
Yes.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I have to vote.
Why do you have to vote?
What's a democracy?
You don't have to vote.
You have to. If you want to,
you have to. You have my vote.
You
sir.
must vote.
It's true. You must vote, or else it's not a true democracy. It's just this like fake democracy that we all. Just
and that's something you're right. We shouldn't take these things for granted. I know a lot of immigrants come here because they don't want to take these things for granted. So you're right. You have but I think it's a low voter turnout. I don't vote. I'm glad you vote. And again, if you want to ever become city council, I'll vote for you.
Thank you.
Who'd you vote for?
Anna Bilal.
Okay.
Oh, close.
I don't know.
Vote for Gong.
Who?
We need a sign up still. We need to get one of his signs.
Find one of those.
I think they're all gone. Purged.
Gentlemen.